You know who made it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the See Me, Be Me podcast. Today, we have a very, very special guest with us, an award-winning motivational speaker known for her empowering messages and transformative teachings focused on the importance of emotional healing. She has been known as a beacon of hope and empowerment, someone whose story of resilience and transformation has touched many hearts. Not just an inspiration, she is a force for positive change. Her incredible journey from overcoming personal challenges to dedicating her life to helping others is nothing short of remarkable. She has faced adversity with unwavering strength and has emerged as a role model for many. She is passionate about empowering others and making a lasting impact in her community. We are thrilled to have the amazing Madiha Sosan. Welcome to the podcast, Madiha.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Niall.
So, award-winning motivational speaker. Going back to your background, and I want to know from the very beginning, how did you get into being a motivational speaker? Were you somebody at school who was always stood up in the classroom, or were you always inspirational growing up? And what did you study at school?
So it's a quite a long journey. If you're gonna have to brace yourself for it. Basically, my journey kind of started off when so I was born in Pakistan. Life in Pakistan was difficult because we didn't have enough money. So my dad moved to the UK when I was 3, and my mom was quite ill. She had hepatitis C, so virus in the liver, and she had numerous other different illnesses as well. So she was completely almost like not bedbound, but like the days that she used to be really, really ill, because we didn't have enough money, we were struggling to pay for her care. Like, it's not like the NHS here where, you get your care for free. In Pakistan, you have to pay. And if you want to pay for extra results, a test, then you have to pay extra money. So we struggled quite a lot in Pakistan, and my dad was here. I didn't see him for 4 years really. And then school life in Pakistan was again difficult. I was one of the teachers in school was physically abusive. So she would get me in front of the class, and she would ask me to read something. And if I made a mistake, she would trigger warning. She would punch me, slap me, hit me with rulers, send me out of the class. And she was only doing that to me and nobody else. And because I was 5-6-year-old, I didn't really pay much attention to it. It wasn't something. I was terrified to go to school. So every day, I used to hide under my bed. And my at that time we were living with my auntie and uncle. They thought I was just a naughty child who was just doesn't want to go to school. But I couldn't put it into words why I was scared to go to school. Now I realize why. But I was 5-6-year-old. I didn't even have a clue why, but I knew that I was scared of the teachers. I knew I was scared. My parents or my auntie used to say, "Oh, you need to go to school." I used to cry so much. So yeah, that went on for about like a year, 2 years. Around the age of 7, me and my mom moved to the UK to be with my dad. Life in the UK, again, it was difficult at first because I didn't speak any English and I didn't have any friends. So my mom and dad was still struggling for money. They had we stayed in a private rented place for about 2 years with 1 bed and 1 heater. And I remember my mom and dad gave me the bed while they slept on the floor for 2 years. Again, school life, I said, I was terrified. I thought the schooling system here would be the same as one in Pakistan. I used to cry like all day long in school, and teachers didn't realize what was going on. I didn't understand. All I knew, I was terrified of the teachers. Wanted to stay away from them. One day, my parents and principal got me in the office and asked me why am I crying? And I just didn't know why I was crying. And I remember the principal said, we're gonna have to put her into special needs school if she carries on, because there may be like, we need to do more investigation. Maybe there's some mental health issues going on. There's some things going on. But they had no idea why I was crying. I didn't know. I couldn't even tell them why I was crying. My parents were like, they kept talking to us like, they will put you in special needs school, and it's not a school you would want to join. Like, maybe like, tell us what's wrong. And I wouldn't. And then after a while, I kind of just settled into school, because the teachers were a lot gentle here than they were in Pakistan. And then I became a captain of my primary school cricket team as well. It was just fear. It was just fear. I think now looking back, there's, like we look up to our adults to keep us safe. And because they didn't know what was going on, I didn't know what was going on. It's looking back now, I feel like it's not almost like victim. It's like, oh gosh, like there's something should have been done about it. There's something should have been somewhere done about it. But it's fine. As it's how it is. It's how we grow. It's how we learn. It's how we process life. And I've done a lot of healing in terms of that. And anyway, so fast forward to when I was 13. My dad was diagnosed with cancer. 4 years on, my dad just passes away with cancer, and I'm the only child, so I ended up caring for my mom. So I've been caring for her for 20 years now, but I ended up caring for her when I was 14. And yeah, so that was for years battled with. I didn't have time to kind of go through the grief process, like with my dad, because it was 6 months after my mom fell ill. So I had to just take that responsibility. My school life suffered. I completely missed year 8, year 9, and bit of year 10. So didn't go to school. I went to year 7 as well, which I was heavily bullied. So I had my dad like at one point rolling on the floor in pain. And then I'm going into school, and I was getting bullied throughout year 7. So I felt like there was no safe space for me. And I was like, 11, 12. So yeah. And then when he died, the responsibility of my mom just took, like, I used to feed her, change her clothes, all the stuff a 13, 14-year-old shouldn't be doing, right? It took its toll, because I slowly started to suffer from anxiety. And I felt like there was no support around me. We had support from social services, and family would come from Canada or Pakistan, but that's limited support. There's not much they could do. They're abroad, right? And so yeah, I went to college. Barely passed my GCSEs. I don't know how I passed, but I passed. Then when I went to college, I did business and IT. Still really starting to suffer from anxiety. It was getting bigger and bigger. It was almost like that alarm bell was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And my responsibility of my mom was getting stronger and stronger. And the grief process and unprocessed emotions were getting, like, they were like pinging me, like, oh, like, looking at this grief, looking at this sadness, you're not looking at this. And then after college is when I went completely, like, hit rock bottom in a way, to a point I started to suffer from extreme anxiety over the course of 10 years. Anxiety to a point I could not even leave the house. I used to have severe panic attacks. Even if I would go to my garden, I would have severe panic attacks. I would have 2, 3 panic attacks a day. I used to have community befrienders come take me, like, to the street, to the park, even our own garden. So I'm, at least moving forward. But it was almost like it's like 10 steps forward and taking 9 steps back. And that was the battle for like 10 years. Depression, anxiety, binge eating. To numb those emotions, I would game every day to numb it, or binge watch TV shows. So I would feel the pain, but I would feel a lot less by just binge doing something. I would binge used to eat Burger Kings and KFCs. I was overweight. And then there was a time where the anxiety was so intense for like a week or 2 weeks. I would not eat anything. I would, like, throw up, or I would have panic attacks, like back to back. And yeah, so that was my life for 10 years. Completely during that time, I didn't believe in anything, like I was an atheist. I didn't think anything was out there. My family's Muslim. I'm not Muslim, but my family's Muslim. So they used to talk about God all the time. And for me, it was like, if God was real, why would he make me suffer? Or why would he make anyone else suffer? So I was dead against it. I was angry. I was angry child. I had quite a lot of unprocessed trauma that I needed to deal with. And then came the awakening. I call it a spiritual awakening or inner awakening, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if you heard of anyone having outer body experiences. Yeah. Yeah, I've had two of them, so I'll tell you about them now. I was one evening around 5, 6 o'clock. I was laying on my bed, and all of a sudden, I felt this like vibration within my body, and it wasn't like shaking. It was almost like that's how I could describe it. And and I remember just feeling that vibration within the body, and then I ended up in this place where everything was just completely white. Like it was so bright that it wouldn't even hurt my eyes. It's like directly looking at a white light. It would really like hurt your eyes. But where I felt I was in that space place, whatever it was, or my mind, wherever it was, felt I just felt this unconditional love. I just felt this is home, and this is where I'm originally from. And that was my feeling when I was in that state, place, or whatever it was. And I remember like there was within the white light there was like uh beams of light, and from my understanding there were souls standing there without any physical appearance. And I went up to one soul. He turned around and turned into face of my dad, and he just smiled and he said, "Everything is okay, don't worry." As soon as he said that, I came back, and I remember from my right foot toe to top of my head, my body was like vibrating, and then all of my body was vibrating. I was honestly freaked out at that point. I was like, what is going on? I have no knowledge of this. I'm not spiritual. I'm an atheist. I follow science. All of that stuff. And it was just, it was crazy for a week where it was almost like I was in such a blissful state. And then my ego would just kind of take over and say, like, what the hell is this? You got some sort of mental disorder or something. Things like this don't happen to people. And so I was battling with that. I didn't tell anybody, thinking people would think I've gone crazy. Um, but I do know that it was when I was in that blissful state, it was almost like there was no fear. I felt like when you are in that state, it felt like you have the key and answers to the universe. Like you literally know the answers to the universe. That's what it felt like. You felt like you are safe. You felt like there is something around you, energy, whatever you want to call it. There's something around you that's protective, right? And I realized that everything everything that you go through, it's not a bad thing. It's actually help you to grow and evolve. And that's what I was getting, but it was like a glimpse of it, and then it would go, and then I would freak out. And then a week later, same thing happened. I ended up in this place where everything was again white, and this was the middle of the night. This was definitely when I was asleep. And yeah, so I just felt this like bubble of this energy just wrapped around me, and I felt so much love, like love that I've never experienced in my entire life, not even from my parents. And I just felt, like I said, home. It just felt homely. I've come back home somewhere. This is somewhere that I've come from. That was the night that changed everything. Everything that I was fearing, it was almost like overnight thing. I went from a person like so anxious and scared and terrified that something bad's always going to happen to me, to just complete knowing and complete fearless state. Like I went from, at that point I was still suffering from extreme anxiety. I went from that person to doing everything. Like literally the next day I got up and went to Tesco, joined the gym, and then like I ended up going on helicopter rides, and like then socializing and going to college, and did a bit of photography, and started playing badminton. Everything changed overnight. Just those two experiences within a week, everything changed. Um, and then you asked me, right, like how I got into public speaking. Like everything on the outside was amazing, but there was one important thing that I was doing, was that I was going within myself and healing those traumas that I held
Mm.
in my body for all those years. I stopped watching TV. I stopped gaming. Anything I was doing, I went off social media for a year, completely could not do any of that anymore. It was almost like the universe was like, okay, you've had your awakening, you're having fun outside, great, amazing. Now it's time for you to reflect on what's been happening in your life. So I started asking myself questions. Didn't have anybody who was on this similar path of healing path. I didn't know anybody. It was just coming to me. I was like, okay, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do this. I have two choices: whether I'm going to sit here and suffer for the rest of my
Mm.
life, or am I going to do something about it and look into my traumas and heal it, take it head on? So I just sat in the room for about 2 years. Every single day I used to ask myself question like, how are you feeling? Are you okay? And I used to ask myself in like most compassionate, loving way, like how I would ask another human being. Like all our lives, we ask
Yep.
other
Yep.
people how you are, and we don't ask ourselves. And all this was coming up, like all this trauma started coming up, trauma about my dad, my mom, my rough childhood, everything was coming up. And it got to, it's like what I say is like the peeling all the layers on the onion. The first bit is the hardest, and then it
Mm.
gets like slight easier until you get to
Easy.
the core, right? And it just became that. It just became like a chore kind of thing. It was like, I'm going to sit with my emotions today and reflect on what's going on. And by that time, like, it was so easy to do. One day I'm rolling on the floor crying, and whatever grief is coming up, and then I'm getting up. It's like, right, I'm done. I'm gonna go and play badminton. I'm gonna release it out my body. And I just, nobody was there to help me. I was just doing this by myself in my room. And then I asked the universe, like, at this point I'm like really in known with the universe. It's like law of attraction, looking up law of attraction, universe, all of that stuff. It's like, universe, I've done all this work. How do you want me to help people? How do you want me to? I want to turn this negative life experiences into something positive that would help people and motivate people. How should I do it? And I had a thought, let it go. A couple of weeks later, at a friend's meeting house in Manchester, at this law of attraction meeting, me and my friend was stood outside a building. So she's an actress, and she's like, I get stage fright, and I want to do public speaking. And I'm like, what is public speaking? Is this like a business thing? And she's like, no, you can go on stage and share your story, and you can do it that way. I was like, oh, that's interesting. While we were talking about public speaking, these two guys popped out of the building, and they were talking about public speaking, and they teach public speaking, right? And yeah, exactly. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go for it. Because at this point, remember, I'm fearless, no anxiety whatsoever, right? And I'm like, I'm going to go for it. It was her idea. She didn't go for it. And I said yes. And over 3 months, we ended up just, obviously learning about public speaking. And then towards the end of the course, we were going to get an audience to present, like, what we learned.
Yeah.
So I ended up just giving a talk to over 100 people, and I shared my story to over 100 people. And then 3 months later, I gave a talk about importance of inner healing, and what I did after my, the adversity. That was 250 people. And then someone who was set in the audience nominated me for Best Female Inspirational Person of the Year award, which I went on to win. So that year, 2019, was an incredible year. I know it's like a long-winded answer, but that's how it all started, basically.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack and in that. So take me back to when 10 years ago, when you first had that moment, that out of body experience, going through the upbringing that you had, obviously losing your father very early in life, and being a young child, and you suffered physical abuse at the hands of teachers in Pakistan, and coming over here as somebody who doesn't know the English language, I've never been to the UK, and growing up and having to learn the language. Obviously, the cards were they were stacked against you. And how did because some people go through, they've suffered trauma or things have happened in life and they can never get over it, try and make something out of the cards that they're dealt with. Was it as simple as having that out of body experience, then the next day it was just like, yeah, I'm changing now? Or was there a little bit of resistance first, and then, slowly, like day by day, I was saying, I'm not going to do the gaming anymore. I'm going to go play badminton. Was it just literally a flip of a switch overnight and that was it?
Yeah, well, in my case, for other people, it might be the process might be gradual, but in my case, it was instant. After that out of body experience, I just could not eat meat anymore. It was almost like my taste bud changed. Like I don't know how to describe it because it was so rapid. It's like it was rapid, like when your your brain's like legged it, right?
Yeah.
And your body's like slow to catching up. It wasn't even a decision. It was just how it was. The only thing was driving me was I cannot live the same life I've been living my whole life. And that was like, and I was trusting. This is the thing. I wasn't controlling. I was trusting more in life. I was trusting more in the universe. And I had faith and trust that my highest good, there was something there. Your soul's here, or you're here to make a difference, whether it's to make a difference in a small scale or big scale. You're here to transmute all your traumas, and I could understand that at that point, and it's like a day by day. It took me about a year to do, like about 6 months, I would say, because it was 2016, and then about 6 months I did quite a lot of physical things, like going out there, improving, self-improvement. How can I improve myself? Where are the things I'm lacking? Okay, I'm physically, I'm not doing so good. I'm gonna join the gym. Where is it emotionally? What can I do? I started meditating. I didn't even know what meditation was. Like I just sat, like, because the distractions went. There was no social media. There was no gaming. I could not even do it anymore. It was felt boring. And all I could do was just sit. I would just sit, like go walk barefoot onto the grass, randomly just take shoes off and then just sit there, and ended up meditating. And then slowly that just built momentum. You don't really need to have like an outer body experience or spiritual experience or inner awakening experience to go through that. I think it's, for everybody is different. Everybody's on a different scale of like timeline. I think the most important decision that you can make is like make it now rather than sooner than later.
Wow. So obviously you've got your own podcast, Soul Awakenings. And I suppose for the audience, that listen to the podcast, and even some of the guests, what is some of the most, let's talk through the guests, like, in terms of some of the people you've interviewed or you've spoken to, do their experiences match yours in terms of the out of body experience, or is it on a spectrum? Everybody's different.
It's very different. I mean, I've been interviewing people from like all different backgrounds, so mental health, spiritual, or people have been through adversity. So there are some quite big names out there, like Rachel Alno. She was on Dragon's Den. she came on and she was talking about spiritual aspect and feminine and masculine energy. We talk about like meditations or yoga, dark night the soul, or some we had like Mr. Bob Dole, who's in the book The Secret, law of attraction book and movie, and which was like has been quite popular in the personal development world. And he came on and he talked about rewiring your brain to manifest, right? So
Mm.
all these people have been coming on. They're either specialize in trauma work, or they so specialize, they talk about spiritual stuff, their own experiences. So it's very educational for people who are newly getting on, not just the spirit, I know it's called soul awakenings, but newly
Mm.
getting on personal development journey, to look out for there might be something more than what you think. Like the deep depression could also mean that there's a dark night of the soul, which means that your ego is going through a bit of a death and a rebirth process. And when that happens, ultimately you need to shut down, right? And if you look at it that way, rather than thinking, oh, I've got depression and I'm down and out, if you look at that,
Mm.
it's actually, there's a process happening within you that's dying, and it's birthing a new you, a new way to be, and like it's a better version of you. So just like how caterpillar goes into cocoon and then becomes a butterfly, and there is a process in between that needs to happen. And I think if you start living by that faith and trust that there is, doesn't have to be like spiritual, live by that faith that we're always evolving and growing. There's no way we're not going backwards. We're always going to be going forwards.
You know who made it.
Don't like change. Human beings do not like
No,
change.
no, definitely
Yeah,
not.
yeah, and that's why we go into depression after anything that happens, like changes. A lot of your body's going through a process, and your ego, because so many people I've seen go out of a relationship, for example, and then they end up saying, after they've done all this healing, they end up saying, "Oh wow, I'm a completely different person now. I don't do this anymore. I don't do that anymore. I don't I don't drink as much anymore. Or I don't smoke as much. I'm into my health. I'm into my personal development. I've joined the gym." All of that is positive change. And sometimes if you go willingly, it's easier. But if you fight against it, then your ego needs to go through a bit of a death process. That's what the dark night soul is. You lose the identity of your old self. You're shredding.
Mm.
So a new identity comes in, a new improved version. Like just like TVs, you can't stay on the same TV for 50 years. They keep on upgrading. So our human body is intelligent, our emotional state is intelligent, our brain is intelligent, and it needs to keep on upgrading and not be in that stuck same box kind of thinking either. So it's like it has to and then that attracts a lot of things. We shy away from, like, oh, I hope I never break up. I hope I never lose my job. I hope that fear state. When we're in that fear state, then it's harder to navigate. It's almost like you're swimming against the current of a river than a flow of river. What I normally say and teach or talk about is to invite that darkness in, invite that the adversity in, and allow it to sit there, and you can focus on it and reflect on it. And obviously not for too long, because you can, if you're not used to it, then you can go down in a dark hole. The darkness and shadow of you needs to be acknowledged at the same time, the light of you. So if you lose your job, that's a good thing, because something bad is coming. Your relationships ended. It's sad that it's ended, but it's also a good thing, because that's making its way for the right person to come in, for the right job to come in, for right situation to come in. It's just a mindset shift as well, just a mindset shift, and like doing internal work along with it as well.
You're saying the first step, let's say, because that was going to be my question, is what's the first step in the, let's say, in that process of healing and getting rid of the trauma that might be within. Yeah, embrace it, let it in, and then
Yeah.
rebuild from there. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
so basically, when you kind of hit rock bottom, where I say your breakdown is breakthrough in life, and it's so true, because when you lose everything, you lose your job, you lose your car, you lose this, you lose that, you lose a partner. It's like you starting from clean slate, right? And if somebody's there, I want to start working on my traumas, I've got so much trauma. The first step is, like, obviously work with a therapist, work with somebody who's a professional at this. The first step is always to sit with those emotions. So that's what we call it, darkness, but it's like those emotions. Like, we've been growing up. The amount of, we go in schools, me and Krish. So Krish is like, who's founder of Tales to Inspire. We go in schools, and you wouldn't realize recognize how many kids think that bad emotions like sadness, anger, frustration it's bad, and we need to tuck it away. We've grown up thinking that we have to be happy, we have to be positive, we can't look at the bad emotions, bad experiences in life, and we've kind of put it back of our subconscious mind, and it's there, it plays its part. So the first step is to start sitting with your emotions, and that's the simplest thing that you can do. Maybe put a timer on, like 5 minutes. Start off with 5 minutes, like put a timer on. I'm not gonna go on my phone, not gonna distract myself, I'm gonna mute my husband, wife, whatever, I'm gonna mute everything, and I'm just gonna sit in the room. And just like, you can do meditation, that helps, like, do a couple of box breathing in for 4 seconds, then hold for 4 seconds, then breathing out. And then you kind of enter a state of nothingness. And that's when all this stuff comes up. People say, like, when I start meditating, it's so chaotic in my head. It's all those unorganized, like, kind of stuff that we've not really got to, right? Let it sit there. Let it be you. I got you. Like, I see it. And then if one of them, say your sadness starting to come up, it's like, okay. And you start questioning it. It's like you start questioning your emotions. It's like, when was the last time did I experience it? Oh, that was actually yesterday. I was in Tesco and somebody really triggered the hell out of me. And that's when the emotions came up. And then it's like, when was the first time I experienced this emotion? And that's when it gets little bit deeper, where oftentimes we think bad emotions are linked to our childhood stuff. And it doesn't have to be big trauma, small trauma. It could be anything that happened in your past, where the same emotions and the same triggers have been playing out. So if you're feeling, like, say I felt abandoned by my dad when I was 3, and I didn't realize it, or abandoned by my dad at 13 when he died, so those emotions, I'm holding space for myself, the 13-year-old myself, the 3-year-old self, and I'm just telling her, like, it's going to be okay. At the same time, allowing myself to cry as well. So rather than like saying, "Oh, it's gonna be okay, I'll be fine. I know the answer now. I see where it started off," but try and dig into a little bit of the emotions, and slowly, when it comes up, cry, let it out. Even if you have to cry ugly, do it.
No, it's always I always find it's a nice release when, if you're going through a difficult time and just letting out your emotions, and
you feel so much lighter, don't you? Like, yeah.
You do, and you know what? I'm not afraid to say that. You know what? When especially those dark times, like, I mean, when a relative of mine, my granddad passed away. Was this 2019? That was a really emotional time for me. But I felt like just by letting it out and crying, at first I said I wouldn't cry at the funeral, and then I cried, and I was just bawling like a baby. But it was celebration of his life. But I felt so much better the coming days after, just because I think I didn't let it build up. And I think sometimes as guys, we keep everything locked in, and it's keeping those emotions held in. It can lead to stress, and probably the signs of a lot of disease, like cancer, is caused by it. Sometimes people say it's by stress as well. And if people just released it in different ways, whether it was just crying or exercise or anything like that.
Yeah, I was
You know,
just
positive
about
ways.
yeah, I was just about to say as well, like, thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable because, again, like men in our society, we're kind of taught to be strong and powerful and not, we're not emotional, but we both carry, like, there's a masculine side and a feminine side, we're all within us. And it's
Mm.
okay to be vulnerable, to let your emotions flow. That makes you stronger, not weaker, because you're emotionally very strong to brave to let those emotions out. um and as you know, you were saying about the exercise as well, like, your body does keep the score. So the way explain it in my talks is like, you have this trash can inside of you, right? And this each trash can is like, there's a rotten tomato, and think of it as a bad experience or trauma or anything bad's happened to you. And each time something happens, it goes into your trash can, right? And that's going inside of you. And then something else happens, you go through a breakup, another rotten tomato goes inside of you. And then there's someone at Tesco really annoyed you, that's a rotten tomato goes in. And because we're not kind of trained or taught to how to release those emotions, it gets buried inside of you. So what's happening now is like, you're living with this for like 30, 35, 40, 50, 60, 70 years of all these rotten tomatoes inside of you. And what do you do with the actual bin? It stinks. If you keep it on, like, keep rubbish in there for such a long
Mm.
time, you need to take it out. Every week we have this process of getting bins out. Why can't we get a bin out from inside of us? And that's what say is like, the first bit is hardest, but then it gets easier. And once you get all these rotten tomatoes out of your body, your system, you'll actually find the gems inside of you, and you'll also create a lot of experiences and um, opportunities in life. Your system is very intelligent. Our body is very intelligent. It's doing its part to protect. It thinks it's protecting the exiles, but it's actually doing more damage. So what you need to do is like go in a little bit deeper and pull those traumas and from the roots and try and get them out. And that's how it starts. You start seeing the gems, you start seeing the new opportunities, because remember I said, by letting go of all things, situations, things including traumas, will bring in new opportunity, new experiences, and higher state of intelligence, because your body's just gone through an upgrade.
Wow.